Hi, I'm Old Sneelock. Welcome to another episode of Old Sneelock's Workshop. Behind me sits a 2012 Chevy Colorado. I bought it about 6 years ago, and it's been a good truck. Been happy with it. So, last Friday, I went to town and I filled up the tank on the truck because we were going to go to my son's house for a birthday party for my two grandsons. And I had bought a swimming pool, and the swimming pool had to ride in the back of the truck. It was a wading pool, but it's too big to fit in the trunk of the Lincoln. And I would prefer to drive the Lincoln up as far as Hudsonville because my wife is much more comfortable in the Lincoln than she is in the pickup truck. But we wanted to go see our grandsons and have their birthday. Well, on my way to town, the truck didn't want to start very well. It cranked a bit. And then when I got to the gas station and got out of the truck, I smelled gasoline. That's never a good thing. When you smell gasoline, that means that there's something wrong with the vehicle. Just checking to make sure the camera's running. Well, I looked and I didn't see anything wrong under the hood. I was looking on the wrong end of the truck. I filled the tank, knowing that I wanted to go up and have the birthday party the next day, and I drove on over to Myers and picked up some groceries and things. Came back out and I smelled gasoline even stronger. So I got to looking, and I looked underneath the truck, and I had a spreading pool of gasoline, steady drip. As long as the engine was running, it was dripping gasoline. I said, well, I got to get home. So I drove home, parked in the parking lot, or in the driveway, and shut off the engine, left it sit, got out, got under, and looked all over the place, couldn't find anything, didn't see any holes, didn't see anything where it had sprayed on anything. And I was thinking I had a gas line leaking, because how often do you get a hole in your tank? I mean, I've been buying and driving cars for, I started when I was 17, and I'm 74 now. You can do the math. Never had one with a hole in the tank. Now, I've had people come to me with holes in the tank, but usually that's a case of somebody being overly stupid. And motorcycles, I had holes in tanks. Lawnmowers, go-karts, all kinds of other things, but never a car. It was always something leaked because the line came loose. You know, line to the carburetor was leaking, float was stuck, something like that. I never had a situation where the gas tank leaked. But I thought, well, okay, first thing to do, go check online and see what's going on with it. And I did. Turns out that there's a lot of Chevy Colorados, also Chevy Silverados, GMC Sierras, Yukons, Canyons, all kinds of these GM vehicles that leak from the top of the fuel tank. And it seemed like that there was a common thread to it. Either the pump itself had quit working and they were changing the pump because the pump quit working. The level gauge, the rheostat that measures the angle of the float in the tank, went bad, or the pump itself just quit pumping. Or they were leaking gas, and about the same amount of gas I was, which meant I wasn't driving the truck anymore. If I didn't absolutely have to, if I didn't have to move it, I wasn't going to. So I said, okay, I've got to repair the fuel pump on this truck, and I've got to get it done. But I won't be able to go up to the birthday party because I know I'm not going to get it done on Saturday. It's just not going to happen. Wife and I talked it over. We talked about taking it into a dealership, which was huge money. Or there's a mechanic over by Gull Road, or Gull Lake, I should say, that has worked on the Lincoln for me. And I trust him. He does a good job. Still, if I went with a low price on changing the pump, it's going to be $700. Now, despite all the talk in the papers and online about, we're going to get lots of money from Social Security, we're not going to get a lot of money from anything. There's going to be a lot of talk. There's going to be a lot of hand waving and flag waving and just bullcrap. I don't expect to get anything from anybody for anything. So I'm working with what I make, and knowing that I'm not making a lot of money these days, I decided, okay, let's find out how much it's going to cost to actually change this thing. No labor cost involved because I'm the labor. So I looked it up and saw all these guys changing out their pumps and said, well, it's a major pain in the butt, but I do have the hoist. Hoist wasn't working at the time. I knew I was still a day or two away from having the hoist working. But I said, I'm going to have to change the pump. Just threw up my hands and said, okay, I'm screwed. Can't help. Well, time went on, and I kept doing more research on it and fixed the crane, and the crane's working. I can lift the truck off, or lift the bed off the truck, and not any problem. Lift it up, have it 4 foot up in the air. No, have it a good 5 foot, maybe even 6 foot up in the air. And turn it, set it back down on the ground so that it's sitting on the end of the truck bed, or on the tailgate, and have it completely out of the way, safe and sound. Or I can just raise it up, set it on some 2x4s or a framework or something, jack stands, and work on the truck. So I said, okay, I've got my options ready. I know what I can do. But before I did that, before I gave up and threw my hands up in the air, I said, you know what? I've been looking online, and I'm finding that there's an awful lot of these Colorados, especially the early version, but also the new ones that are having the same problem. When people go to change the pump, whether the pump died, the level sensor died, or the vacuum system died, or it was leaking gas out the top, they all had to do one thing. They had to pull that pump out. And when they pulled the tank down, they had to fight like the dickens to get the pump loose, because every one of them was rusted. Every one of them was rusted. Now, some of them are rusted terminally. They've got a hole cleaned through, you could stick your finger through. One of them I saw, all the pipes had rusted off. I assumed that one had been sitting in a junkyard for a while because nobody drove that one home. There wasn't a fuel pump. Nope, not going to drive it home. Bring it home on a trailer, perhaps. Take it somehow, tow truck, whatever. They might do that. And these were guys who did that kind of work. They would buy a truck and flip it and make some money off of it. More power to them. I'm happy to see people willing to do that kind of work. But it also meant that there were a lot of dead pumps out in the world. A lot of rusty dead pumps. I said, well, okay. That sounds like a design flaw. Now, I retired as an engineer. I retired as an engineer, and then I went on to be a consulting engineer during my retirement. I've worked for a lot of companies, done numerous things, troubleshooting, technical writing, machine repair, plant maintenance, building construction, and also operated the fleet. So I had an intimate experience and knowledge of what I could expect. But I thought, first thing I got to do, I got to call GM and say, hey, I got a problem. What can you do for me? You know, always take the best construction on it, say they're going to be honest, upright, understanding people, and say, oh, you've got a problem? How can we help? So last night I sat down and I thought about what I was going to say and how I was going to say it. I used an AI system. And it was very good, and it helped me a lot. And I thought out a plan and what I was going to say and how I was going to say it. Then I called General Motors. And I talked to a nice young lady who was very, I wouldn't say understanding, but she was very attentive. She listened to everything I said, asked me questions. And I said, this is my problem. I have this 2012 Chevy Colorado. I know there has been at least 3 recalls for leaking fuel systems. And this is because the AI was able to look up all this information for me. I said, here's a listing of the different recall notices and the numbers to back them up. And I said, I'm looking to have something done so that I can get this truck back on the road. Well, the young lady said, best I can do for you. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, we have to have someone at one of our dealerships look at the vehicle. I said, okay, I can go along with that. How much? And where? When? How long? Well, the answers to that one is where the rub of the whole situation is. It has to be Plainwell, Michigan, which is about 11 miles away. That's not too bad, but I can't drive the truck. I have to have it towed or pulled. Now, even if I had a trailer to haul it with, I'd be towing it with this truck. So I'd have to pay someone to take it over there and drop it off. And they said, well, as soon as we can get to it is a week, because I called GM over in Plainwell. After GM assistant said, well, I'll connect you with the Plainwell dealership. And then I was on hold for 20 minutes, no response. And she had said, I need your phone number in case we're cut off, I can call you back. Well, she didn't call back. So that tells me that they're following rule number 1, stall. Whatever you do, when someone calls with a complaint, you stall. You try and get them to be discouraged so that they won't call back. You try and get them discouraged so they'll just give up and walk away and forget about it. I say, well, I can't get anything done. I'm not going to have any help. And this is going to be too much trouble. I'm just going to give up. But I said, well, you know, I know who I was going to be talking to. So I went online and I found the phone number for the service department at the dealership, Midway dealership over in Plainwell. I'm not attacking Midway. Midway is actually the victim at this point, because GM has said, we're going to throw Midway and Plainwell under the bus. It's not their problem. They didn't sell me the truck. They had nothing to do with it, other than they are paying a big chunk of money for their dealership. their franchise. So I called over there and I spoke to a nice young man. They're all very nice because that's part of the training when you're on the phone for a company. They say, this is how you say it, and this is what you say, and this is what you do. You don't act mean, you don't act mad, you don't act like anybody's at fault. You just say, this is what it is, and this is how it's going to be, and then you stop. First one to talk loses. So I sat there for a few minutes, and they sat there for a few minutes. Finally, I gave up because, you know, I had nothing to win. It wasn't a game of mine's longer than yours. I said, well, if the deal is that I'm going to pay somebody to tow my truck over to your dealership, then I'm going to pay you to look at it. And if it's under warranty, there might be some part of it that gets paid under warranty, but there's going to be additional costs to it. And he said, well, more than likely what's going to happen is, yeah, it's going to get towed over here and you're going to pay for that. And if at the end of it, GM agrees to it, they may offer some money towards the towing. Dead silence. I said, well, sounds like that's not a deal I can live with. So I said, all right, I'm all done with this one. I've turned in a report to the Traffic Safety Board, whatever that is, whatever federal pack of wackos that is. And because I had the AI doing work with me, I told it what I wanted it to say, and it said, you know, in nice legal English, so I have a letter written, I have an email written, and I used the script that she gave me when I talked to GM and when I talked to Midway. So by the time it's all done, I spent probably an hour wasting my time. Not really. What I wanted to do was, I said to myself, you know, I'm having a problem. Now this is really not a problem for me. I can change the fuel pump. It's not a big issue. Fuel pump's gonna cost me probably 170 bucks. 212 with all the accessories. That's what I got, the price I got from AutoZone, for one that looked to be a reasonable one. Haven't bought it yet because didn't know where I was going to be at. But I said, okay, now I've got this done and I can move forward. And one way or the other, if I move forward in a way that I want to, or move forward in a way that I have to, I at least have, I can say I've done everything I could do. Made everything happen the way it should be. Tried to make everything be right. And now I can run a video and say anything I want to say as long as it's legal and provable. And everything I've said this morning is that. Because I look at the data from the different YouTube videos, because I can see the information that they gave me, and a pretty good chance that they're not lying about it, because when they say the pump rusted out, and I see the video of them taking the pump out and it's crumbling in their hands, or they're trying to get the lock ring out, and when the lock ring comes out, the 4 lugs that are in the top of the plastic gasoline tank break off because they're rusted away. And I watched one guy, watch Wes work. Love that channel. Great guy. He was working on a Chevy Colorado that somebody had gotten so disgusted with that when it stopped on the road near his farm, over by another farmer's house, the guy said, I gotta restart this one. Okay, there we go. The guy said, I'm not monkeying with it anymore. got out of the truck, walked away, left it. So the farmer, rather than saying, okay, it's not worth the trouble, I'm not going to spend $1,200 to have somebody replace the fuel pump. He said, okay. Farmer said, it's worthwhile. I'm going to just change the pump. So he ended up not doing that, calling Watch Wes work. I don't know what the deal is there. Maybe Wes is doing it pro bono. Who knows? Sometimes you got a neighbor that you like, you just help them out. So Wes found a way to fix a plastic tank. Now, when I say plastic tank, that brings up a couple of other questions. Why is the tank made out of plastic? Well, it's not because plastic is better. No, it's not. I had a 1946 3-ton flatbed truck. Monstrous thing. And it had a big gas tank in it, about 25, 30 gallon gas tank. That was made in 1946. And there wasn't a hole in that tank anywhere. When I put a new engine in, well, I bought a wrecked truck, a 1946 Ford pickup truck, and pulled the engine, pulled the transmission, put it into the 3-ton, and made it into a hauler for hauling tractors around. When I did that, the fuel tank didn't have a problem. The fuel lines were fine. Everything on the engine was fine. It was all made in 1946, right after World War II, long time ago. So it's not that plastic has a longer life than that, because plastic hasn't been around as long as that steel tank was. But one thing that I did notice, I bought a Ford 8N. You've all seen it. If you haven't seen it and you're new to the channel, you should look it up, because the 8N is a workhorse. We call it Big Ernie. No, excuse me. We call it Little Ernie. Big Ernie was the 3-ton Ford truck. And we've also called the 8N Iron Mike, after my son. And after the Boxer, because it's just brutally strong. It does everything I ever wanted. It's got a 6-cylinder engine in it. It'll do 50 miles an hour going down the road in 4th gear, high end. It's just a beast. I towed a 5-ton rock with it around my yard so I could put it next to the driveway where I wanted it. It's tough truck, or tough tractor. Anyways, when I bought the tractor, it was running, because the deal was I wasn't going to bring anything home that wouldn't drive itself off the trailer. First tractor I brought home, I had to have it towed off. And my neighbor said, well, you should get on it and drive it, ride it down. I said, well, no, we can handle it with the winches. It was on his trailer. He said, you probably better get on it and ride it. It's the only time you're going to. It was in sad shape. Well, anyways, fixed that tractor. I fixed the 8N. I got it running, and I noticed that I was having a lot of problems with rust in the carburetor. Just flakes of rust. I said, well, the fuel tank's rusty. Well, if it's set around a long time, it might have rust on the inside if somebody left water in it or left it sitting outside. And just having it in a building where it gets cold and warm, it gets condensation and builds up rust. That's why garbage can rusts out. Not because it's holding water, it's because water gets in it. Anyways, so I said, well, okay, I'm gonna have to put a liner in the tank, and went all kinds of ways looking at the thing, and realized that I was gonna have to spend a lot of money. Is there a theme here? I don't like spending money on something if I don't have to. So that was about the time that they started putting alcohol in gasoline. And regular gas, you couldn't buy unleaded gas without alcohol in it. It just, that was what there was. And it was causing problems in everything. Chainsaws were corroded, lawnmowers, the carburetors went bad on them. The 8-end tank was rusting. And I said, must be the alcohol. Well, there wasn't a real big presence on the internet at the time, because that was late 1998, 99. And I decided that when I bought the tractor, it was later that I discovered that alcohol was a problem. So I said, okay, I'm going to have to get a place to get gasoline without alcohol in it. So I found a place that would sell me gasoline. They call it recreational gas. Turns out I wasn't the only guy with a problem. Motorcycles have steel tanks, and they have carburetors. And anything with a carburetor, whether it's a chainsaw, lawnmower, weed whip, outboard motor, all of them have carburetors. All of them corrode and die on you. Your weed whip that you bought, I don't know, whenever, sometime in the last 20 years, 25 years, probably ran one summer. You had it, you used it that one summer, and you put it away, and when you went to get it out in the spring, no start. Crank, pull, nothing. Well, I am persistent in one thing. I'm not going to get screwed. If I'm going to get beat up, I'm going to take somebody down at least a couple of good punches on my way on to the ground. So I talked to some friends, and I checked with some people, and they said, your carburetors are all corroded up. Something's happened to your carburetors. Well, what's changed? Alcohol in the fuel. Alcohol in the fuel causes the fuel to absorb water. Alcohol absorbs water right out of the air. But it doesn't drop it when it's in the gasoline. Alcohol goes right in gasoline, absorbed, can't see it. It doesn't settle out, it's just absorbed. When it absorbs water, it doesn't settle out, it just stays suspended in the gasoline. But it causes the tank to rust right at the water line, right at the top of the fuel. Now, normally you'd think, well, water's at the bottom of the tank and there's no oxygen there other than what's in the water, and water by itself does not generate oxygen. But when you put alcohol in gasoline, it causes the tank to rust out almost immediately. Not rust through, but it's going to get rusty. So to go back to the whole thing about why plastic tanks, well, because you couldn't buy anything but alcohol in your gas. So late in the 90s, GM decided that they were no longer going to sell steel gas tanks. They had a gas tank on the pickup trucks, and I'm not sure all the brands, all the different vehicle types that had it. But they said no more steel tanks because they were rusting out. So they switched over to plastic tanks. Just like you can't buy you don't buy a steel gas tank anymore. I mean, you might, but if you go into Walmart, Myers, Menards, AutoZone, everybody has plastic gasoline tanks because they all see alcohol, and the alcohol eats the steel tanks up, whether it's a storage tank or the one on your vehicle or the one on your mower. So all your mowers have plastic tanks too. Have you noticed? They all got that white blow molded gas tank. And when you look at a string trimmer, they've all got plastic gas tanks. But nobody wanted to say, well, you know, the alcohol in the gas is causing all these cars to fail, because my senator in Michigan spent a lot of time, effort, and other people's money establishing a fact that, oh, that was going to save the planet because it was going to make it so that we could have a better gasoline and not run short on fuel, because, you know, we were going to run out of fuel real quick. We had to come up with an alternative way of driving our vehicles, whether it's burning hydrogen or electric vehicles. Wonder where I've heard that before. Propane powered vehicles, natural gas powered vehicles. Everybody was coming up with a different way to do something without gasoline, because gasoline was going to go away. There wasn't any gasoline to be found. It was all gone. And we had used up all of it. You're going to hear this timeline a lot. Everything was going to go south in 10 years, and nobody was going to have any gasoline. We were all going to be walking if we didn't have another way to get around. So that's why everything was plastic. Plastic gas tanks went in your vehicle. And everybody started getting fuel-injected cars, because you can't leave alcohol in a float bowl. It'll attract water, and the jets plug up, and because it builds up this white sludge, which is actually the aluminum corroding, and it causes all the jets to plug, so the car won't work. But if you have fuel injection, you can just squirt more gas in. You pump it through a jet and under high pressure, and you can spray it into the engine, and the intake manifold is plastic. Yeah. Crazy, isn't it? So they rebuilt a whole ecosystem of vehicles. And none of them looked like the ones that they were before. And everything was made out of plastic. Except, you know, there's some things that are just, they don't work well with plastic. The locking ring that held the fuel pump in the top of the gas tank, they didn't work so well with plastic. You had to have steel. And rather than say, okay, we're going to have a problem just like we had with the steel tanks, with this locking ring and this pump that goes into the tanks, anything with alcohol in it's going to make that locking ring just corrode right up and go away. And anything that was exposed to it would rust up. So people drove their cars until the fuel tank started leaking, spraying gas all over the place, and then they either scrapped the vehicle or tried to buy another tank, but buying tanks is tough. They're very expensive. And if you have an older vehicle, one guy had a early S10, and he went to, that was Watch West work, and he went to change the pump out, and the lugs on top of the tank that held the pump in place so that the locking ring could go around and click onto those lugs, the lugs rusted right off because they were made out of steel. Well, Wes, being a guy after my own heart, I like him, he said, I'm gonna find a way to make this work. So he went looking, and he found this repair kit for plastic tanks. I said, oh, I'm going to watch this. This is one of the last things that I watched. So he took this repair kit, and he put the pump in the tank. Well, first he put an O-ring into the tank. He had to adjust the size of the O-ring because the hole had shrank because the plastic had deformed. And so he adjusted the size of the O-ring so it would fit. Then he put the pump in. Then he took this round ring, looked like a big washer, about 6-8 inches in diameter, had a hole in the center big enough to go over the top of the pump. Put that in there. And he took 4 sheet metal screws, same as what I used to put the siding on this building. They have a little rubber seal on them so that when you tighten them down, the water doesn't leak through from the outside. They're not designed to stop stuff from leaking out of around the screw. The rubber does not compress in and go around the screw itself. It's mostly leak resistant. Kind of like when I say I used to be 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and now I'm just slightly under 6 feet and dent resistant. Well, those screws are rust resistant. They're galvanized. And when you run them through a piece of plastic, it takes some of the galvanized off. That screw is prone to rust. Not today, probably not tomorrow, maybe not for 5 years, but it's still gonna rust. If you don't believe me, go to your grandma's house. She probably still got an old house. Mine did. They had galvanized water pipes because iron water pipes rusted away. So they put galvanized water pipes in. And galvanized doesn't leak as long as the galvanized is solid. But right there at the threads, right there at the threads on the ends of that pipe, they cut off the galvanized. And they rusted right through and broke off. How do I know that? Many years of working in factories. Every factory my other camera stopped. Okay, thanks for waiting. Appreciate the patience. I got 2 cameras going just because belt and suspenders kind of guy. Well, all those factories had a lot of galvanized pipe in them because most of them were made in the 50s, long before PVC pipe. So I replaced a lot of broken off pipes. So anyways, watch Wes work, put this pump in, and I thought, well, you know, you got the guy a truck, maybe the truck will last another 5 years, maybe the screws won't rust out in the time that he has it, but you did the best you could, Wes. But why don't you use stainless screws? I can go to Menards and pick up a batch of stainless sheet metal screws. I can go to Tractor Supply and buy stainless sheet metal screws. Probably could get some at Lowe's or Home Depot or AutoZone or Advance Auto or O'Reilly's. You see, there's a lot of places to get this stuff. So even the fixes, they look at it and say, well, how much does it cost to make this part? Well, the little metal ring that you got 5 holes in it so you can put screws in and hold the pump in, may weigh 2-3 ounces. 3 little screws may weigh an ounce. Stainless is not that expensive, buying it by the pound, and it's no different to fabricate than steel, but it doesn't rust. If GM, instead of saying, well, we're going to save X amount of dollars on this vehicle so we can sell it for less, we're going to make it cheaper so that we can sell it cheaper and sell more of them. Now, actually, they can make more profit off of it rather than selling it cheaper. It is what it is. So now, because of crappy decisions by automotive manufacturers, I'm ending up with a truck that has a massive gasoline leak from the tank. And I have to take the truck bed off and pull the pump out and replace the pump. I'm going to spend a day doing it, 2 days, however long it takes. And it's all because, why? Why did they want to do this and screw everybody? I mean, Who would want to do that? So I'll let you know what happens with my ongoing saga with GM. I don't expect a whole lot to happen, but I certainly am going to get a couple of shots at their knees on the way down. If you have any suggestions for new video, questions about today's video, or any of the other videos on the channel, just drop a note in the comments. You know I read them all. Thanks for watching.